1. This happened last Friday. I had gone into a lovely suburb in my city called Fremantle. My nan and I used to go there a lot, and now that she's passed, I like to go there and remember the good times. I just finished some lunch and decided to go visit some of the sites that I had been wanting to visit, but hadn't been able to because of this crap year. It was then that I got the idea to go to the Fremantle Shipwreck Museum and either visit the Batavia exhibit, again, as it had been many years since I had went there, and thought I would brush up on my memories about it. I went in, chatted with the clerk a little, and then went into the exhibit. I was looking over the various exhibits when I heard the climate control doors open and a lady and her grandchild walk in. I kept looking at the skeleton I was looking at, and just quietly listened to the kiddo, who was about 8, marveling at the exhibit. There's a singular joy for history fans in hearing kids exclaim wonder about exhibits. As I listened, I heard the lady trying to explain things to her child, but I could hear that she wasn't confident in the history of the wreck, so I thought I would offer my knowledge to help them through the exhibit. Hey, I'm a bit of a history fan. Would you like me to explain some of this for you both?
That would be wonderful, thank you. That piece of the ship looks so cool. Is it from the actual ship?
It is. It was the only piece that was able to be recovered from the reef.
What happened to the ship?
Alright, well, nearly 400 years ago, in 1629, the VOC Dutch East Indian in Batavia wreck on the Houtman Abroyes Islands, about 350 kilometers north of where we're standing. I'll keep brevity, I tend to be long-winded. Suffice to say, it was quite detailed. I did have to keep from chuckling at moments while talking about it. The wreck of the Batavia is singularly horrifying. Every time I would get close speaking about murder or other awful things that happened, I could see the grandmother's face tighten and frown. I could see that she knew enough to know what might actually come next, and was quite worried that I would just talk about what people actually did to each other. So I would carefully sidestep that particular conclusion and move on. As things started to get to the point where I couldn't avoid talking about murder, I pointed to one of the bronze cannons hauled from the reef and asked the kiddo if he would like to know how the cannon worked. The grandmother again looked relieved, and we went to talk about cannons in maritime history. After about 45 minutes of talking, they decided that they wanted to move to a different exhibit, and I wished them well before going to look at the HMAS Sydney exhibit, which was totally new to me. After I came out of the exhibit and went to leave, the clerk stopped me. She asked me if I was the one who helped the lady with the kid in the exhibit, and I said yes, that we talked for quite a while. The clerk laughed and said that the lady told her that she really enjoyed the Batavia tour guide with the ponytail, and that she made a donation because she knew that the museum runs on volunteers. The clerk was thoroughly baffled at this statement and said that there were no tour guides for the Batavia exhibit. The lady looked confused for a moment and said it was great anyway before leaving. The clerk and I had a laugh about this when she told me, and we chatted some more about history. It was a good, fun, and great day all around. 2. This happened on Monday evening, as it was the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, and I desperately wanted to see it. A once-in-a-lifetime event, who wouldn't? In the morning, I went to my city's only telescope store and bought myself a brand new Maskatov scope to view it with. I had been intending on getting a planetary scope for a while, then went home over an hour away to pack my stuff and wait for the event that evening, which had been advertised on the store's website. I figured it would just be a bunch of nerds getting together, everyone setting up their telescopes and enjoying the conjunction on the beach with the sun setting over the water and just having a great time. Yeah, not so much. I didn't realize it was a semi-organized public event. I picked up my hubby from work and then went straight up to the beach over an hour away, excited to get my gear set up, including my new scope, and stood there waiting for the sun to set up the first twinkling lights to come out, just so I could get my telescope calibrated and ready for viewing. Then people started to arrive. Lots of people. People started coming up to me, and of course I got excited and started talking about the conjunction. There were a good 10 to 15 other telescopes set up around me. I figured a few passers-by might be interested as well, as I'm always happy to share my love of astronomy with other people. The sky gets dark. I have agreed to let a few people I'm talking to look through my scope, once I've had a look and hubby has too. I managed to spot Jupiter and Saturn in the distance over the water, and I gave up on doing any alignment and just go straight for the main show. I've got a photographer in my face taking photos while I'm trying to get the planets in my field of view. Hobby's also grudging at the photographer for not asking permission, but I ignored him. And then success! I have Jupiter and Saturn both in my eyepiece, and they look magnificent. I move back and let Hobby take a look, while I get a different lens to increase the magnification. Then I look up, and there's a huge queue of people wanting to look through my brand new telescope. I adjusted the scope, got everything sorted, took one look at Hobby and grabbed the pamphlets I had in the bottom of my eyepiece bag for the local observatory left over from another event I'd taken my other scope to. I wasn't officially part of this event, and people did find out that I was there with my private telescope. But I would feel bad for turning them away, especially with a crowd of 2,500 people trying to get a view through about 10 to 15 telescopes, and apparently mine was one of the ones giving the best view. So Hobby and I both fell into telescope operator mode since we volunteer at an observatory and started talking to people. We were dishing out facts about Jupiter and Saturn, answering questions as best we could, and talking about the fact that we hadn't seen a conjunction like this in 400 years. We also handed out pamphlets to encourage them to come up for a tour of the observatory, while everyone was taking turns looking through my telescope, and we were adjusting the eyepiece so everyone could view the conjunction comfortably. We had a ball and didn't get to see a whole lot of the planets through the scope, but I think being able to share such an amazing event with people was even better than spending the whole night huddled around a telescope. I'm also glad that we've got no community transition of COVID-19, as there was no social distancing to speak of. But everyone seemed to enjoy themselves, and I made some new friends, as well as getting some pointers from the lovely owner of the telescope store. There were no yelling people, everyone was polite and friendly. It was just one of those, I don't work here, but I'll happily share my passion with you situations, and I would definitely do it again. 3. I've worked in retail for years, and had a few experiences with the whole I don't work here when I'm in my uniform with company name clearly displayed, while I'm out getting groceries after work. But none of them have been very interesting, as the person making the mistake usually just accepts it and moves on. This particular one, though, really did take the cake, and I wasn't even awake and out of bed yet. At some time after 5 a.m., after a restless night with my baby niece and needing my sleep for work, my phone rings. I woke up sometime during the ringing, rolled over with one bleary eye open, face smooshed into my pillow, and the tiniest bit of drool smeared over my cheek. I glanced at my phone, don't recognize the number, and hit the decline button. I then roll over and attempt to go back to blissful sleep in the hour I still have before my alarm is due to go off. The phone rings again. I squint at the screen, don't recognize the number, and hit decline, and once again roll over to try and get back to sleep. Then my phone dings with an incoming text. I groan. I pull my phone over to me and blearily read the text.
Knobhead here.
It's 5:17 a.m. Well, who the F is this? I don't know anyone with the name Knobhead, and certainly not someone who should be ringing at this time of the morning. And following up with texts? Just as an aside, I'm not a morning person. I don't do well being dragged from my sleep, and my temper may flare randomly as a result. I angrily type back, "Knobhead, who and why are you ringing me so early, waking me up?" I hope that will be the end of it. They'll realize they've got the wrong number and leave me to sleep. Did I mention I'm a bit sluggish in the morning, and that my brain isn't fully functioning yet? I get a reply back at 5:38, me finally having drifted off again. The ding wakes me up with a groan. The message was as follows. We were exchanged numbers, so I have a point-odd contact. I am the house. If I'm stuck, I can call the house and insert what I later find out is the boss's name, massively misspelled here, now known as Boss. Could pick me up if lost, and if you need support, someone to talk to, you can call me any time, day or night. Befuddled brain attempts to untangle the incomprehensible text while I squint at the screen. Can this guy not spell? I'm tired, grumpy. I've been up half the night with a 6-month-old. I also don't have my glasses on because sleeping, and I really struggle to understand what this guy's babbling on about at nearly 5:38 a.m., when any reasonable person is still sleeping. This is where my temper gets the better of me. I reply, rather snippily I'll admit, "What the hell are you on about? Who's boss? I think you've got the wrong number, and you've gone and woken me up when I've only had a few hours sleep because of the baby. Who rings someone at 5:30 a.m.? because I didn't look at the time when the original call came through. Bus the bus. You were awake and kindly offered me a ride, but I can't afford $10 gas today. Thank you for thinking of me. Hope your day is a good one. So now I can definitely add reading comprehension to this guy's lack of spelling, grammar, and punctuation. I would have thought by now he would have the tiniest inkling that maybe he had the wrong number. It's now 5:46 a.m. My reply was short and sweet. Wrong person. It's knobhead, mate. What part of wrong person didn't penetrate? By this point, I'm boiling the kettle for my first coffee, because I know I'm not getting back to sleep. I fire back a text. I don't know you. I don't know boss. Delete my number and never contact me again. Thank you. I thought that was rather polite given I haven't had a coffee yet. 4 minutes later, my phone dings. Okay, sorry to hear that. Take care and I hope your day is nice. Number deleted. Finally. I think I got through to him. It only took an hour and it's 5:51 now. I'm halfway through my first coffee, still a bit bitter about being woken up early, and still not functioning properly, but victory! 6:22 a.m. My phone dings again. Knobhead is back. WTF. I'm so sorry, it looks like the old bugger gave me the wrong number. Please accept my apology, I only just figured it out. Number deleted now, kind regards, Knobhead. Really? Knobhead? It took you over an hour to figure out you had the wrong number? You couldn't have accepted that when I first told you? As soon as 9 a.m. hit, I contacted my cell phone provider and had his number blocked, just in case. Because for some niggly reason I just couldn't trust a guy who tells me he's deleted my number twice, and also failed to recognize he didn't have the correct number when he was specifically told he had the incorrect person. 4. For a little background, I worked as a teacher's aide at a science center from 13 to 17. It was a fun gig, and I got kids and adults interested in whatever I was teaching due to the fact that I can be extremely animated when I talk. Right next to our science center was a natural history museum. Ours was free to enter, but that one you had to pay for, unless you were an employee of one of the museums. Anyway, on this particular summer Friday day, I was 16, and this was around the time a new dinosaur hall had just opened up at the Natural History Museum. So while I waited for my older brother to finish up his shift, we both worked there, I figured I'd go to the dinosaur hall and practice some sketching. While there and still in uniform, a woman that had to be in her mid-30s came up to me and asked if I can tell her about a specific skeleton she and her kids were looking at. Still being in work mode and loving to talk about anything prehistoric, I happily agreed. As I got into my mojo, more and more people came up to listen to what I had to say, asking questions and laughing at my horrible dino puns. About 20 minutes later, I had about 40 people following me around the animal exhibits and having a ball, until, that is, my brother texted me it was time to bounce. Bidding the group a farewell, I left to enjoy my weekend, not knowing what was about to happen the following week. Turns out a lot of the people at the Natural History Museum came up to various managers to say how I was an awesome tour guide. So much so, one of the higher-ups had to find out more about me. Once she found out who I was and where I worked, she scheduled a meeting with my boss and the CEO of the Science Center. I came in on Tuesday, clock in, and was about to get my day started when I'm called in to see my boss. Walking into our office, I see her, the CEO of the Science Center, and a woman. Wondering WTF is going on, I ask what's happening here. The woman walks up and shakes my hand and says she was a hiring manager from the Natural History Museum. She was discussing with my boss how much someone like me would be perfect for the NHM. My boss cut her off to ask me what this was all about. Then it hit me. Last Friday. I then explained to my boss and the CEO what happened on Friday, and then they all had a look of clarity on their faces. The manager from the NHM was eager to get me on board. However, my boss, in the calmest, slyest manner, said that was never going to happen. The manager looked at her with a silent rage and asked why she thought that. My boss said, 1, we have a contract with him, so he can't just join you, and 2, he's only 16. What I later found out is that the Natural History Museum only hires adults. The manager looked at me with confusion. I look about 3 years older than I am. I think it's the height and the mustache. The next part I will never forget. My boss said with a grin that looked like it belonged on the love child of the Grinch and the Cheshire Cat, "Sorry, manager, but this one's ours." The manager left in a huff, clearly upset she lost the fight. After we knew she was gone, the CEO was pissing himself laughing. Through tears and gasps, he told me, "Try not to do that again." My boss said I might want to stay away from the Natural History Museum for a while. The manager wasn't the type to give up so easily, and that's how I became sort of a legend amongst the staff in the Science Center. 5. Like most of us with a landline, cheaper than TV internet in my northeast US region, don't judge, I was getting a ton of spam calls. All about my car warranty, which I never had or purchased, my wife's student loans, who never went to college, IRS collections, energy sales, etc., you name it, they called. Well, we decided to start picking up and harassing the scammers. Big mistake. They don't take you off their call lists. Instead, they start to spoof your number so that your number shows in their caller ID for everyone they call. It got so bad that we changed our voicemail from, "Hi, you reached the," insert our names here, "please leave a message," to, "If you received a call from us and don't recognize our number, it is a scam. Please report this to local police," as we have reported it to our police and nothing has changed. Scammers are taking us all, and nothing will change if we ignore the calls. Yes, it was that bad. We were receiving 10 plus voicemails per day, most threatening, "Stop effing calling," "Go to FA," insert racial slur for an animal here, "I'm calling the police," etc. We turned off our ringer, disconnected our phones so only our fax machine and printer picked up, and hoped for the best to no avail. Thus I started the "I don't work here" lady approach. I had a few calls that I picked up during this time frame, and the "I don't work here" lady calls were surprisingly wholesome. A typical call transcript, paraphrased of course, is below. "Hello.
Stop effing calling me."
Hey, I know this isn't what you expect, but I think you've been had by scam calls. They're spoofing my number to call you, and I've reported it to my local police. I made a mistake of answering and trying to give them a hard time. Now they spoof my number to call others and punish me. You can Google it and verify my story, just don't answer their calls no matter what you do. Please also call your local police and report my number and the calls so we can get these calls to stop. I told them my name and where I lived before adding, "I'm just as sick of these calls as you are. Please report my number to your police." Maybe then there will be some legislature or pressure on the phone companies to stop this nonsense.
"Oh, hey, sorry. I just get so many of these calls and I'm frustrated beyond belief. Sorry to bother you."
Except for the Karens, but the rest of the conversation on my part remained the same. Seriously, report my number to the police and block it. We have no prior business, and let your phone company know as well. I am with, and I give them my phone provider, and the only way they'll make changes is if we all complain enough so they have to deal with it. I am happy to speak with local police about the issue, and, just for the record, I do not want any information from you. Let's deal with this shit guerrilla style. Conversations from that point typically ended with apologies and mutual understanding, or promises to call the police and report my number, to which I always reiterated, "Please do." This is how we make the world a better place, or some similar sentiment. Before we wrap up, let me address some of the most common questions and comments that I've received. Firstly, this is my landline, and changing the number only shuffles my spam calls to someone else, and someone else's spam to me. The phone company puts a shiny complaint resolved sticker on the books, and nothing actually changes. Also, have you ever changed your phone number? How many people have your current number? It's a royal pain and not worth my effort. I'd rather spend the same amount of time talking to other victims of this crap, and maybe they will talk to others. Eventually something might change because the people took action. Secondly, why didn't I report it to the phone company? I did, and they basically told me, "We get this complaint a lot, there isn't anything we can do about it aside from changing your number." See point 1 for why I'm not doing that. We're also getting a lot of hateful voicemails, even with my updated answering machine message, so I thought the police should be involved since it could be considered harassment. Thirdly, spam filtering is enabled through the phone company, and as a landline my phone isn't running Android or iOS, so the smartphone tricks don't work. I definitely think these are great tools. Unfortunately, blocking all numbers not in your contacts can have adverse effects. The doctor's office calling to verify your appointment using a secondary line at their office, automated calls from your work or school regarding inclement weather closings, family or friends calling from an unfamiliar number, and so on. And lastly, for anyone with a landline experiencing this same thing, unplugging your answering machine and setting a fax machine, most multifunction printers nowadays have fax machines built in, to pick up on the second ring seems to stop the calls. I did this for 3 months, and when I plugged my answering machine back in, my inbound call volume was way down, from 10 to 30 calls per day to maybe 1 or 2. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Idiots in the Wild, number 28. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. And of course, I'd just like to remind folks that, well, just because someone's included in an Idiots in the Wild story doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person. A lot of the time, people are just a little oblivious. In the case of the telescope story, probably a few oblivious people, followed by a bunch of other people who thought, ooh, Q, let's join it. And I'm certainly not going to get judgy about someone keeping a landline. While I don't actually use my landline telephone, it's pretty much constantly unplugged, I did make a point recently when I called them to upgrade my internet service, because turns out, yes, I could get a better deal for the same price, that I made sure I kept my landline deal with it. Because while everybody that needs my phone number gets my cell phone number these days, I like to have it as a backup, just in case something's wrong with the cell phone, if it's not charged, if it's out of money, because I don't have a bill for mine. I like to just put a bunch of money in it, and when I need more, I'll add more. Just for my needs, that works a lot better. But yeah, I think it's good to have the backup. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.